Ukraine may want to come into the Euro fold, and so may want the EU elites. But are the electorates ready or willing to accept a state that is in a war with its neighbour and has the agricultural ability to upset farmers in Europe? The road to the EU, rocky or smooth? So, it could be just like the Eurovision Song Contest. But do Western Europeans really want to change? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Historically, on the 9th of May, Ukraine celebrated the now-discredited holiday Victory Day. In 2023, Ukrainian President Volodomyyr Zelenskyy made the symbolic decision to abandon the Soviet-era holiday, electing to commemorate Europe Day instead. This year, however, the decision carries real weight, as discussions regarding Ukraine's accession to the European Union slowly but surely gain more and more traction. The advanced discussions are set to happen after the upcoming European election, as currently the European body is focused on reaching a consensus with the bloc's disgruntled farmers, who are critical of cheaper Ukrainian farming exports destabilizing the domestic markets. After the election's results, more will be known regarding the ideological shape and political hopes of the newly elected European officials, chosen for a 5-year term. At the end of June, European leaders will sign a strategic agenda for the next European Commission regarding European reform. The expectation is that Poland, which is to take over the rotating presidency of the Council of the EU in 2025, will start to lay the foundations for enlargement. Despite all the positives, challenges still lay ahead. According to experts, along with economic issues which need immediate attention, many of which are closely tied to Ukraine's reconstruction efforts, Kiev must introduce a number of reforms. Among the most pressing is an effective fight against corruption to attract substantial foreign direct investment. This, in turn, will enable technology transfer and create conditions for fair competition on both the Ukrainian and European markets.
Our guest today is Daniel Szeligowski, the Eastern Europe programme at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. So welcome to the programme, great to have you.
Hello.
A little bit of reminiscence on my part to start off with. I can remember the Eurovision Song Contest in the 1980s and 1990s, very Western European orientated, and then suddenly it seemed that Eastern Europe appeared on the map. All the competitors came over, and Western European commentators were quite annoyed at this. They couldn't understand the languages, they couldn't understand the way that everybody voted for each other, that kind of stuff. Eastern Europe was an unknown factor. Is this picture still true from the Western European perspective?
Well, I think to some extent it is. The competition is something that we always fear. But then if you look at what's really, or where's really the epicenter of Europe now, of the European Union, you look at the economic indicators, you look at the GDP, and then you clearly see that it's the Central Europe, not the Western Europe, that actually drives the European Union up. So actually this is something that contributed to the development of Europe, not necessarily been to the detriment of Europe as such. Of course that the population in Western Europe, let's say the politicians in Western Europe could have different priorities. I mean, each country basically cares about themselves. Poland, Germany, and France, of course. So from the Portuguese point of view or from the Spanish point of view, surely Ukraine may be a country far away that they do know little about, but actually, if you, again, for these strategic reasons and for these economic reasons, this is something important for Europe. And embracing Ukraine is something that could be yet another driver, economic driver and strategic driver for Europe in future.
A few days ago, we had the Europe Day and great celebration of Poland joining the EU. Were these general, on a historical basis, were these general European values or particular Western European values? You mentioned the fact that Eastern Europe has a great contribution to make, but is it adopting Western European models, or can it bring its own Eastern Eastern European experience into that and thus change the European Union as we know it?
Well, I would rather say that it's still a Europe of nations. It's not a federal state. It is a Europe of nations, and you have this national flavor in the European Union, and you can see it everywhere, in Brussels as well. So I would say that there is a strong Central European vibe within the European Union, the way how we look at the European issues, the way how we look at Brussels, the way how we do things, how we settle the disputes, etc. In this respect, I think that the Pope John Paul II once said that there are two lungs in Europe, the Western one and the Eastern one, and they complement each other. So I wouldn't try to contradict, trying to put one against the other. I think again that these are two pillars of Europe as such, and I think there is no contradiction actually when the strong experience, the strong tradition of freedom in Central Europe, the struggle for freedom, and this is something that really underpins the European values. You cannot just cross it out from Europe.
I suppose also if you go back to things like the Holy Roman Empire, it had the Slavic pillar as part of its four regions of Europe. But my question would be, is that convincing European electorates to think in that way? Or, as you say, do they just think about their own economic interests?
Well, I think that at the moment we will more be talking about the securitization of different policies in Europe, and the security situation is as it is. We know that there is still the war looming over the horizon and just across the border. As in Ukraine, the Russian invasion is here to stay. It won't go away tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So the securitization is here to stay with us as well. The security issues and, of course, the economic issues connected, that this will be something that will decide. This will weigh in heavily on the upcoming European elections. And this is something that the constituencies in Western Europe, in Central Europe, will be paying particular attention. So you cannot, again, ignore that. I think the priorities are not necessarily contradictory. There is a strong, I would say, vibe, strong idea that Europe should be, at least economically, self-standing to some extent. I mean, as much as we can. That it should be a strong and independent economic and security player. Then, of course, how we do that, how we approach this moment, how we approach these issues. Okay, we differ in terms of response, not necessarily in terms of ideas, and not necessarily in terms of diagnosis. But we can work out the details. It shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I think there is this moment before the elections that everyone is trying to create even artificial divisions, because it plays out within the elections as you have to create your opponent and in order to position yourself. But after the elections, it could be a bit easier, I would say. Why should Europe be moving east towards Ukraine, or to accept Ukraine as a member or a candidate member? A farmer in France or Spain could say, well, they're just dumping their stuff on our markets, driving prices down. How should Europe respond, the European elite respond to those concerns on the economic? Well, the concerns are there.
Accepting Ukraine.
The concerns are there, and they are, I would say, genuine. So these are not artificial concerns. The problem is there. The way we handle the assistance for Ukraine, I think there were some deficiencies, and I got some questions to the European Commission how they did it. For the strategic and for the economic reasons, I think there is a good point to embrace Ukraine. For the strategic reasons, after the war, I would like to have Ukraine on my side. That's going to be one of the biggest and one of the most experienced armies in Europe. I would like to have them on my side after the war. That's one of the strategic reasons, yes. In terms of economics, that's a big country, and that could be a powerful economic driver, no matter how amusing it may sound today. But then I remember the discussions on German-Russian economic relations, that Russia is a big country and this is an economic driver. But then, hey, look, the trade between Germany and Poland, even between Germany and Czech Republic, is much bigger between Germany and Russia. So the size of the country don't really matter at the moment. It's the size of the population and basically the market, the vibrant market, how people are educated, how smart they are, and what the opportunities they do create. And Ukraine creates these opportunities. This is the land that has really strong agricultural sector. It could be used to the favor of the European Union. The Ukrainians are a well-educated population. Even in terms of strategic resources, rare earth minerals, etc., Ukraine is a country that would really contribute to the green transformation of Europe. If we are going in this direction, I'm not judging whether it's right or wrong. We are. It looks like we are going into this green transition. Then Ukraine is a country that would really contribute to that. I mean, it would make for all of us, the transformation much easier.
On a strategic level, though, isn't the European Union expanding into on a collision course with Russia, military collision course with Russia, because the Ukrainian the borders of 2014 seem to be beyond recovery. They've lost Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, and it's impossible, seemingly impossible for the Ukrainian army, experienced though it is, to recover those lands. So aren't we just getting the European Union involved in a forever war with Russia, one of these border wars, these frozen conflicts?
Well, I think we have different processes taking place in parallel. I mean, it takes two to tango, but it takes only one to start a war. And it doesn't really matter that we think we are not at war with Russia. Russia has already decided that this at collision course with us. We are at war with Russia anyway. So that is the first process. But we are in this confrontation. Yes? Let's say the second process, which goes in parallel, is preparing Ukraine for the EU membership. We are not deciding on the borders now. We're just preparing it for future membership. This is because you don't have to lose time. I mean, you don't have to wait for the settlement of the conflict in order to prepare the country for the membership. What Russia occupies now is less than 20%, it's like 15%, 10 to 15% of the Ukrainian territory. Even if it's not settled, I'm not judging on that at the moment. Even if it's not settled, it could be possible to include Ukraine in the European Union. I do believe that at some point these things will be settled. The key to the settlement lie in Moscow, unfortunately, not in Kyiv. So it would include, I mean, possibly even regime change in Russia in the future. But you don't have to lose this time. You can prepare the country at the moment. I'm in Ukraine. You can take advantage of Ukrainian resources. I mean, now I'm trying to look from the European perspective. If we include Ukraine, we can get these advantages ourselves. So I'm strongly in favor of pushing the whole process of European integration of Ukraine at the moment, even having in mind that it's a long process, and at the moment, at some point, we will have to decide on this issue of borders and some settlement with the Russians. But it is still, I would say, a distant future.
Where do you see the European policies, electorates going in the upcoming elections? There's talk about the European Parliament shifting to the right. If we accept that, if that happens, where does that leave Ukraine? Or does it alter policy at all?
Well, it could alter to some extent, not fundamentally, but to some extent. But the most painful decisions, the most difficult ones, have already been taken. So it's the opening, the negotiations. It will be. I mean, de facto they are open. The EU rate will be open a couple of days, I believe, before the end of this month. I get the political reason before Hungary steps in and takes the chairmanship of the council.
Yes.
But it will be open. It would mean that we close the chapter of the sort of political decisions and now really go into bureaucracy. And in this respect, it's going to be a long and painful process of adjustment on the Ukrainian side. And it would matter much less than before whether the parliament is leaning towards right or towards left. It's going to be a really difficult and long process. I would say if Ukraine would be ready in 10 years' time, which is like 2 terms of the European Parliament, yes? In 10 years' time, if we will be approaching the moment of Ukrainian membership, I would say it's a success. It's a huge success.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time again. So, Daniel Szeligovsky, thanks very much for coming onto the programme. I hope we have a chance to talk about China and the global south on next time. So, that'll be a fruitful discussion. Thanks very much again.
Thank you.
So, once more, we've run out of time. So, join us for the next time on How We Got Here.